everybody, it's Kira and welcome back to my channel. So today I am doing season 1 recap for Shadow and Bone. This was requested by my friend Molly, but I figured might as well put it out here for everybody to see as well. So I'm going to attempt to keep it under 10 minutes. We'll see if that happens. I also have my computer over to the side, so if you see me looking over here, that's what I'm doing. So without further ado, let's get into this recap of season 1 of Shadow and Bone. So we meet our main character, whose name is Alina. She is a cartographer who grew up as an orphan in this country called Ravka. The biggest thing about Ravka is that there is this stretch of darkness called the Fold, and it's this really dark place in which these creatures named Volcra live, and they will eat people. So the Fold is the country of Ravka off from the coast. And so Alina is a cartographer in the First Army, and we also meet her childhood best friend, whose name is Matt, and he is a tracker in the First Army. In the first episode, we kind of see them on the eastern front of the Fold. There are also these people called Grisha. They are people with different kinds of power. We also meet two of Mal's good friends, Dubrov and Mikhail. They're just two other guys who are part of Mal's group, and the three of them are really good friends. So Mal ends up being chosen to go across the Fold, and Alina is freaking out because she's like, I don't want to be separated from you and have you go on this dangerous thing. And so Mal and Alina end up talking, and he's like, I'll find my way back to you. Alina can't stomach Mal going across the Fold without her, and so she ends up burning the maps of the Western Front to be able to say, hey, I'll go along and redraw the maps. But instead of her whole company ends up being sent across the Fold. So her and Mal end up on this sand skiff, which is the name of the boats that they use. And they travel across the Fold, but while they're in the Fold, they are attacked by Volcra. People are dying. It's chaos. Mal ends up being attacked, and Alina starts freaking out, and this power, this light just bursts out of her and kills off the Volcra. So one of the characters who was on the skiff is named Alexei, and he ends up jumping off the skiff to save his own life and ends up making it all the way to the western end of the Fold. And he's kind of our connection to our second side of the story, which takes place starting off in Ketterdam in the country of Kurt. So there we have the Crow Club, and there we meet our three main characters from here. We have Kaz Brecker, who is also known as Dirty Hands or the Bastard of the Barrel. He has a lot of nicknames. As far as that goes, he is the one who is in charge of this club, the Crow Club. We also meet Jesper, who is a sharpshooter extraordinaire who works for Kaz, and we also meet Inej, who is the Wraith, who can climb on rooftops and is very stealthy. So Inej comes to Kaz with info on a job for 1,000,000 Kruga, which is like their money. So she doesn't know much about it. She knows that you have to cross the Fold, and it's being done by a merchant named Dreesen, and Dreesen needs a Heartrender, and so they're like, that is our way in. So Heartrender is one of the Grisha, one of the people with powers. So we kind of hear some of the backstory of the Fold, how the Fold was created by the Darkling, who is a Grisha with shadow control, or like can control shadows. Kaz, Inej, and Jesper end up getting a Heartrender. They kind of sneak her out from where she was, and we also meet Pekka Rollins. Kaz very much has a grudge against. We don't know quite why in the show yet. So our trio plus the Heartrender end up meeting with Dreesen, who has captured Alexei, who was the one who like made it across all the way from the skiff. They use the Heartrender to kind of calm Alexei and help his memory recover, and so Alexei ends up telling them who it was that made the light appear, and it was Alina Starkov. And so Dreesen ends up killing Alexei. Dreesen tasks our trio, Kaz, Inej, and Jesper, to bring back Alina Starkov for 1,000,000 Kruga. That is the end of the first episode. On to episode 2. We'll go back to Alina and Mal. So the episode starts with kind of explaining the testing process for Grisha. It basically uses sudden pain to help a person's powers like come out. So present day, Alina is taken to General Kerrigan's tent. He is the current Darkling. He has a lot. He can control shadows, but he is also just a general in the Second Army, which is the army of Grisha. So Alina's taken to his tent, and he reveals her power. She, of course, at first is like, no, that wasn't me. Like, I'm not Grisha. But he reveals her power, and he sends Alina off to the Little Palace, which is where all the Grisha train. He's like, you'll be safer there because all of our enemies will want to know and will know about you because of like your light. So Alina is sent off to the Little Palace, but while they're on the way, her carriage and group is attacked by Fjordans, which are the Northerners. The Darkling ends up saving her with what's called the Cut, which is when he can basically just like slice somebody in half by using his shadow. And so Alina and the Darkling kind of talk it out a little bit. He's like, you're going to be hunted all your life, and she's like, I'm not ready for this. I did not sign up for this. And they end up going on alone together. Of course, Mal was like trying to get to her, but he was injured on the sand skiff when they were crossing the Fold, so he's still like trying really hard to go, and he thinks about even at one point like sneaking out during the middle of the night to like go and save her, and his friends convince him. They're like, no, you need to like win a medal and get invited to the palace, and that's how you do it. He's like, fine, okay. So we have that, and then we move back to Ketterdam. And so we find out that Inej is unable to travel because she's tied to Helene, and they also just don't have a way to get across the Fold because, you know, it's really dangerous. But we also find out about the conductor, who is someone who has crossed the Fold many times. So Inej is trying to go, but she is still owes this debt to Helene, and Helene is finally like, listen, if you kill this man for me, I'll let you go and consider your debt paid. So she's like, okay, cool, I'm gonna do that then. Even though Inej is against killing at this point, she has never killed anyone and thinks it's immoral. So Kaz ends up getting information on who this conductor is and figures out that it's the guy that Inej was sent to kill. So he ends up putting the Crow Club up as collateral for Inej's debt. So Kaz ends up finding her right before she's about to kill the conductor and convinces her that this is somebody that they need to keep alive. We find out the conductor's name is Urkin. All right, on to episode 3. So episode 3 opens, we have our first glimpse of the stag, which will become important later on. We are with Alina, who has made it to the Little Palace now, Mal. And we meet Jenya, who is a tailor, which means her Grisha power is that she can make people look good. We also find out about her and Zoya, who I haven't mentioned yet, but Zoya is another Grisha who has just taken an instant disliking to Alina, so they kind of butt heads a little bit. We meet Nadia and Marie, who are two of Alina's friends. They kind of take her under their wing and lead her through training. We get another image of this mysterious stag. Don't know what that's about yet. And then we also meet the Apparat, who is the kind of spiritual advisor to both the Darkling and the King. And he explains this concept of amplifiers. So Grisha's power is like within them and whatever, and they can get stronger, but the best way for that, or like the easiest way to get stronger, is to get an amplifier. He explains that the stag, this mysterious stag, is actually mythical, and it was one of like the original amplifiers. We also meet Bagra, who is kind of one of the ones who's like helping train Alina. They don't have a good relationship. She's kind of mean. There's also lots of Alina writing letters to Mal. We also then, to connect everything together, because they have a way across the folds, the trio plus the conductor have been given this job to go capture Alina. They're given transportation to the western side of Revka, and of course they will need to cross the fold. We find out the conductor has a Grisha contact on the western side named Nina. We meet Nina for the first time. She is a heartrender. We find out that she is then captured by Fjordans and taking on a slave ship. And there we meet our other crow character, Matthias, who is one of the Fjordans who like captured her. So with our trio in Arkin, we find out that Arkin has this train basically to get across the fold. And so they end up crossing the fold. Of course, they end up attacked by Volcra, and Jesper does some amazing shooting. And also we have this really funny scene with the goat named Milo, who was an addition to the show, but is so fantastic. So episode 4, we start off with Mal and his regiment, I guess, has been sent along, where we see him writing letters to Alina, and then he ends up being given this opportunity to go look for the stag, which of course everybody thinks is mythical, but he's like, this is how I can do it. I recognize that drawing, it's one of Alina's. I'm gonna use this to get back to her. With Alina, we have more of her and General Kirigan, aka the Darkling, them like starting to form this relationship. They talk about the fact that his name is Alexander, and we kind of get the description of how it was one of his ancestors that created the fold, the Black Heretic, and he's like, I must fix the problem of my forefathers. And then Mal and his friends, because of course Dubrov and Mikhail end up going with Mal on this party to track the stag. So they end up getting closer to the Fjordan border looking for the stag. But Mal and Alina still have not heard from each other. They're both writing letters, but they still have not heard from each other. And Alina finally realizes that she needs to let go of Mal and her past and accept being a Grisha, and that's what's going to unlock her powers. And so she kind of comes to this realization at the same time that Mal is looking for the stag and trying to get back to her, right? So Mal and the boys end up attacked by Fjordans, and both Mikhail and Dubrov die. So tragic. And Mal gets very much injured. But he sees the stag. It appears to him in real life. So as far as our other crew, our Ketterdam crew, they have made it through the fold, but now they have to figure out how to get into the palace to capture Alina. Jesper has this really funny goodbye moment with the goat Milo and gives him a necklace with a bullet on it, which will be important later. And they do a mini little heist inside the archives to try and find the architectural plans for the little palace. So they realize that the best way to get in is to go in during the Winter Fete, which happens in episode 5. That's kind of our big convergence point of all of our stories, almost all of them. So the Winter Fete is just this big party, but it's also going to be a demonstration of Alina's power. So we learn a little bit more in this episode about Jenya and her backstory about being given to the king by the Darkling. And she has this really good line, be careful of powerful men. We also get Jesper and Inej talking about the Sun Summoner, which is Alina, and how Inej thinks that Alina is like a saint because she's been foretold and has these powers. So we also get Mal. He demands that he can be the one to deliver this letter that they found the stag to General Kirigan, because it's also a way to like get himself to the palace to Alina. Right before the fete, Alina and General Kirigan have this nice moment. They're talking and they end up kissing. So for our heist people, they've decided that Arkin is going to grab the target, Alina. Jesper's in charge of the getaway. Kaz and Inej will clear the path. Right? Keep that in mind. So it is Winter Fete time. Kaz and Inej pose as guards and they watch Alina's performance. We have Mal reaching the little palace and he ends up talking to General Kirigan by himself, and Kirigan's like, oh, I know who you are. You are the Mal that Alina keeps talking about, but I'm not going to tell you that. I'm just going to be mean about it instead. Arkin, right, in charge of grabbing Alina, he instead kills her. What? He's apprehended before he can get away, and we find out that it was actually Marie, one of Alina's friends, who was being like a body double for her safety, which is good, but also that means that Marie ends up dying. Of course, Kaz knew all along that Arkin wasn't on their side. It turns out Arkin was working with the general on the west end of Revka, who's kind of starting to maybe pose some like civil war kind of ideas. So Kaz and Inej are the ones who are actually going to grab Alina, and they go to do it, but before they can get away, General Kirigan interrupts them and is like, I'll take you away to dinner. And so Kaz and Inej are like, crap, we don't have our target anymore. They go to leave, but then they're kind of noticed by this Inferne, which is a Grisha with fire powers. And so their cover is blown, they split up and run away. General Kirigan takes Alina out to his room, and instead of going to the dinner, they have a big make-out session. And then he gets called away by news that Marie has been killed because it turned out it was Alina. And he tells Alina, stay here, nothing's wrong, I'll take care of it. And then Backer comes into the room and explains everything, how the Darkling was lying to Alina and manipulating her this whole time. Turns out he is the Black Heretic, he's the one who created the fold, and he wants to actually expand the fold. He wants Alina dependent on him. You also find out that Bagra is the Darkling's mother. So Bagra has a plan, she's like, I'm gonna get you out of here. And Alina, instead of following the plan, ends up deviating and going off on her own. Just before that, Mal had been taken to Bagra's hut because Bagra is trying to keep the stag away from General Kirigan. So Mal gets taken to Bagra's tent and attacked there. The intent was to kill him, but he escapes. So Kaz and Inej are on the run, right? We'll have this scene with Kaz in this church. He gets cornered by the Inferni. We have our first little glimpse looks at Dirty Hands where he like crunches the guy's hand. However, the Inferni stands back up with his fire and is ready to throw it at Kaz, and Kaz is about to die, and then Inej comes in and throws a knife and kills the Inferni and saves him, and turns into her first kill being the one to save Kaz. Alina ends up finding a carriage and climbing into like the trunk on the back end of it. Turns out it's the carriage that Jesper had waiting. And so when Kaz and Inej come out and they're like, we don't have eyes on the target, Jesper's just kind of like, huh, don't we? And he's like, they have captured Alina without really trying to capture Alina. It's really funny. One last little scene in episode 5 that the Darkling and Bagra kind of talk, and she's kind of taunting him about the fact that like this tracker who knows what the stag is dead. However, Mal is actually just listening in. He finds out that the stag is important and that Alina has also gone missing. Episode 6. So we start off with the Darkling interrogating Arkin, who's working for the Restoration General, Zlatan, that's his name. Arkin mentions that Nina was his contact, but that she has gone missing. And then he dies, gets eaten by Shep. We go back to Alina and her trio. She gets out of the box and ends up being surrounded by her trio. She blinds them to be able to get away, but also Inej kind of lets her go at the same time. So Alina runs off and is on her own. She ends up running into the woods, and lo and behold, Mal is there. So her and Alina and Mal end up taking off together in the woods because the Darkling knows that Nina has gone missing. So he ends up tasking this other guy named Fedyor to go and find Nina. Then we transfer over to Nina and Matthias, who were on the slave ship. They were going up to the north. There's a big storm. The ship sinks, and Nina and Matthias end up having to work together to keep each other alive. They make it through the water. They end up at a whaler's hut. There's a lot of banter back and forth. So Alina and Mal are off on their own. They end up talking and finding out that they were writing each other letters, but that their letters just never got sent to each other until they kind of make up. Alina decides that they are going to go after the stag because she can use that power to take down the fold and also defeat the Darkling. Back with our trio, they're kind of at their wits' end because they've lost Alina, but then the Darkling ends up catching up to them. The trio ends up splitting up, being chased by people, and we get a Kaz and Darkling showdown, which was so crazy. Kaz escapes, but Inej ends up getting stabbed from the fight, and the trio decide to steal the Darkling's carriage to make their way basically back to the eastern edge of the fold. Episode 7, we get Darkling backstory. We find out his love was killed in front of him. He was told to stand down, but he used Murzos, which is basically like this ancient magic, instead, but it backfired and ended up creating the fold. So Mal and Alina are going to find the stag. They find the stag, and Alina decides not to kill it at the last second. You're supposed to kill it to take its power, but she has this connection to it, and she's like, I can't kill it. However, then the Darkling ends up finding them. So Mal and the stag end up getting hurt, and Alina is trying to protect them as best as she can, but she can't protect both of them. She ends up choosing Mal over the stag. The Darkling kills the stag and captures Mal and Alina, and he ends up taking them back to the eastern edge of the fold. So Kaz and Inej and Jesper have decided to cut their losses and go back to Ketterdam. We have a really nice scene with Kaz and Inej where Inej is like, I can't go back to Ketterdam, I can't go back to captivity, and he's like, you won't have to, like you have to trust me that I care about you and that I care about my crows. So we're back to the eastern edge, kind of basically where the show started with Mal and Alina. The Darkling ends up taking some of the antlers from the stag and creating this like collar for Alina. But then the Darkling also has a piece of the antler, so basically the Darkling can control Alina's power. Jenya comes back and her and Alina have a little conversation, and Alina's like, you betrayed me. We find out that Jenya poisoned the king, kind of get back at him for all the awful things that he had done to her. But Alina's like, but that means that the Darkling can now take over, and that Jenya has kind of chosen the Darkling side. We also get this really interesting talk/threat session between Mal and the Darkling, and Mal is captured and tied up in it, as it were. However, Mal ends up finding this goat with a bullet around its neck, and he ends up using that bullet to escape. So he sneaks away onto the skiff that is going to go across the fold. Our intrepid trio are also sneaking aboard the skiff undercover, posing as other people. As the Darkling is taking Alina onto the skiff, there's also some of the representatives who were like at the Winter Fete from these other countries who are on the skiff as well. We also, in episode 7, have Fine, Make Me Your Villain quotes. The Darkling's like, everything I've done has been for my country, and Alina's like, no, you just want power, and we could have helped each other, but instead you made me this, and he goes, fine, make me your villain, which is a really famous quote. We end the episode with everyone on board the skiff, so Mal has snuck aboard, and Inej, Jesper, and Kaz are all posing as other people on board the skiff, and then Alina and the Darkling are on the skiff as well. We have our first No Mourners, No Funerals, which is great, and we end the episode going out into the fold. My camera is about to die, so I'm going to change that now. So my camera is plugged in, let's go. Let's start episode 8. I'm going to start with Nina and Matthias. So they've become friends now, even though they are on opposite sides of the floor, and they have made it to Ravka on the coast, but Fedyor, the guy who was tasked with finding Nina, he finds them and drops the blood flow from Matthias' head and is like, why haven't you escaped from him unless you care about him? And Nina realizes that the only way for them both to make it out alive is to claim that Matthias is a slaver. There are people from Kurt. Their law is that Nina can testify that he's a slaver, and they will take him instead of the Grisha taking him back to Ravka and probably killing him. So the two of them end up on a boat that is on its way to Ketterdam. Of course, Matthias feels betrayed because Nina is like, I'll drop the charges, but he's like, you betrayed my trust. And you find out that Matthias isn't actually going to go to court. He's going to go to this prison called Hellgate, which is where we leave them. All right, so big fold fight. Basically what happens, Mal and Kaz, Inej, and Jesper end up kind of on the same team. They realize that they're all want to fight the Darkling. The skiff ends up stopping just before they reach the city of Novokubirsk, which is the town on the western front. That's where Zlatan is. We find out that Zoya has family there too, which is why she has volunteered to go on these journeys. Darkling is showing off his power on the skiff by expanding the fold to cover the city. He's in control of Alina's power, so they've made it safely through the fold, and he ends up expanding the fold and taking over the city. And Alina's like, frick no, don't do that. So she like is trying to push the light back in, but he's like, and he like pulls the light back, and the shadows and the Volcra end up taking over the city of Novokubirsk. Of course, Zoya is freaking out because her family's there. The noblemen and other people who are on there from the other countries, they're like, like, sir, you can't do that. They end up being killed, and the Darkling's like, oh man, I have to give that speech again. So our heroes come up and try to stop the Darkling, including Inej throwing a knife at the Darkling, which was epic. Everything's chaos. He pulls the light totally away, so the Volcra are also mixed into this fight. And Alina finally realizes that the stag has chosen her for this power. It's not something that the Darkling can control. So she takes her power back. She's like, you may have needed me, but I never needed you. So she takes her power back. Mal ends up throwing the Darkling overboard, so Mal and the Darkling are fighting on the ground. Mal is like, haha, I don't need to take care of you. Your past will do it for me. And a Volcra carries the Darkling off. So we finally, everything's calmed down. We are out of the fold. We end up around a campfire. Alina gives Kaz a bribe to keep quiet about who she is, so Kaz is just like, it's money, so I guess I will do that. Zoya decides she's gonna go back into the fold to look at Novo Krbir's where it was. Kaz is like, don't go looking for the dead, and she's like, it'll hurt me worse if I don't go. Mel and Alina are gonna go kind of recover and regroup before going after the Darkling again. So Kaz, Inej, and Jesper all end up on the same boat out to Ketterdam that Nina is on. So Nina kind of overhears them a little bit, and they have a quick conversation. So that kind of sets up the Crows in season 2. And yeah, Mel and Alina are gonna go recover and regroup. And the last thing we see is the Darkling coming out of the fold with those new shadow monsters whose names I cannot pronounce. So I probably had to speed that up to make it under 10 minutes because I talk so much, and also there's a lot that happens. It's like 5 pages on my Google Docs here. But yeah, there's your recap of season 1 of Shadow and Bone. I'm so excited for season 2. I cannot wait to see what they do with it. So yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to follow me on social media, all my links will be in the description as always. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.